Welcome back to the Changemaker Podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. Today, my guest is Charles Knox Jr., great guy, and actually family member too. But so Charles grew up in Augusta in a great family with 5 other siblings, which is amazing to me that they're 6 kids. He attended Wake Forest University and studied psychology, counseling, and philosophy. After college, he got his master's in ministry from Asbury Theological Seminary. In the past 4 years, he's worked in college ministry in Athens at UGA, and then in youth ministry back in Augusta at Trinity on the Hill Methodist Church. He's passionate about investing in young people and equipping the next generation to follow Jesus. He's also passionate about pursuing a truly healthy lifestyle in every respect. He has a lovely wife, Julia, and he's also addicted to pickleball. So, Charles, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Changemaker Podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you.
No, man, I am so excited because we were talking a little bit about starting the show, prior to starting the show, that it's almost like I guess you would be Gen Z, right? But every generation has these stereotypes put on them. They're lazy. They're always on their phones now, all this. But two that you always hear was, well, they're leaving the church in droves. And, particularly Generation Z, I hear that all the time. But I find so many people of your generation that have a strong faith that are going to church. So give me sort of an idea of what you see in your generation with regards to their faith and going to churches.
Yeah, it's interesting. In college, most of my friends that I met maybe weren't getting up Sunday morning on their own, just super excited to go to church. But I feel like when we started, to have a little group that went, it just kind of caught on like wildfire.
Yeah.
And they call Gen Z iGen also because iPod, iPhones, everything.
Yeah.
And there's so much that's like new and exciting and, technology advancing and all that. I think young people really just want something that stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And you even see like, the mega church movement, I think is kind of fading a little bit, and people are looking for what has worked consistently for thousands of years.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the megachurch movement, but I was speaking to a minister friend of mine the other day, Mark Mond, and he said, so I think it's so many things in society have become corporate. And I think to a degree, the megachurch movement, no offense, but he said it's like we create these campuses with, gyms and all this stuff, and it's like they become sort of private clubs, and is Jesus really at the center of that? And so I'm glad to hear you say that it's going back to what's been tried and true for centuries, but I had never really thought about that. But I think, in today's society, it's concerning to me that whether it's, college sports and name, image, and likeness deals, and all these college athletes making millions of dollars, getting fancy cars and all this, but the world is sort of feeding, well, you have to have a lot of money, fame, fortune to be relevant. But I think but Mark said, look at all the rate of suicide and mental illness and depression in our country. It's almost like we're being crushed under the weight of the expectations that that's what you have to do to be happy. And that is not at all what our faith teaches us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think you can put a price tag on human relationships.
No.
And anytime that a movement goes away from human relationships, there's going to be pushback.
Yeah.
And so even if something is growing and is exciting and you have a campus, like a church campus that's so big, if people aren't able to find human relationships there, they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to go look somewhere where there has been human relationships in the past.
Well, and that's another, stereotype I hear about Generation Z is that they don't know how to carry on a conversation. I'm like, I've got a strong connection to, I mentor young people all over this country that are in that age range and have wonderful, lengthy conversations. So I think but I do think that even if somebody's not used to, once people have that human interaction face to face, it's like it's so much more substantive than being on your phone.
Yeah, and young people, like, they might not be necessarily as good at conversation as young people were 50 years ago, but I think they have the same ability to pick it up quickly, to learn. Like, we do youth group every week from basically first week of August to last week of May, and the difference in, like, the guys in my small groups, like, their ability to talk to each other and talk about real stuff, like, by the end of the year, it's insane how quickly they grow. And that's what makes youth ministry so exciting to me, is like you don't see that speed of growth in adults very often.
Well, and I often say, we all fall short, but the greatest servant leader ever to walk the face of the earth was our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I'm like, talk about somebody that did grassroots engagement, but that is my passion, is out there being out there at the grassroots level. But it was that interaction. Jesus was there and had a presence with the people he came to save and to serve.
Yeah, and something I've been really focusing on recently that God has just been lighting up in my life is Jesus had so many opportunities to form a mega church and to form a mega following. There were times when he did miracles that, crowds of thousands of people tried to seize him and make him king by force because they were so fired up. But Jesus continually ran away from the crowds. And while he was there to serve everyone and love everyone, he knew that, in order to carry his mission on, he had to invest in a few people to make sure they really got it. Because the same crowds that were, one Sunday they were chanting Hosanna, praising Jesus as he's coming in, riding on a donkey. That same crowd was shouting, "Crucify him," on Friday.
Exactly.
So he knew how fickle crowds were, and he loved the crowds, but he invested in 12 people.
No, and that's just a beautiful thing, and crowds can turn in an instant. Mm-hmm. But it's like I've told people, and we were discussing before coming on, that I think, if you're just following the mainstream media or politics, it's like, oh, we're in such a bad position as a nation. But if you get out there at the grassroots level, you can see the Spirit moving. Mm-hmm. And you can see that we don't live in this dystopian nation. But I think I put a lot of hope, not all on your generation, but I really love what your generation is doing, because you are connected, and that helps to really, that's something that past generations didn't have, to really be able to bring people together, hopefully not just online, but in small groups, as you're saying. But it's just to see people's eyes, I'm sure for you, as you bring people to faith, to see that light go on, has to be really fulfilling.
Absolutely. Yeah, and, I think there's so much content that is pushed in front of our eyes every single day that, I think people have always cared about what's true and what's authentic, but young people, like teenagers, people in their 20s, definitely all of my friends, like, our biggest concern is, what is genuine? Like, they want something that's genuine. And something that we've seen is when I was in high school or when I was in middle school, if people were trying to recruit you to come to their event, whether it's a church event or whatever, they would try to give you all the exciting things. There's going to be bouncy houses. There's going to be free pizza. There's going to be this and going to be that. But there's not much that's that exciting anymore because, we can't compete with YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat. Like, kids are being entertained to death. If you really want to sell them on what you're doing, you have to show them that it's something that is authentic, that provides human connection. Yeah. Because they can't get human connection from YouTube. As awesome as YouTube is, I love YouTube. But, there's something that media can't give you.
Well, it's interesting. I'm part of this group, international group. But anyways, I was talking to these guys on this group speech I was given. But I said, I've figured out that I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm an inspirational speaker. And my friend Chris Cooper that lives in London said, I'll tell you why that is. He said, motivation lights a fire under you. Inspiration lights a fire inside of you. And so every day I'm like, Lord, thank you for the fire that you've lit inside of me. Help it to grow and be a beacon to lead people to you through me and to provide warmth and light. Thank you for the divine spark you've placed within me and with all of your children. Help that spark light the fire in other people to make them really have a passion for building your kingdom on earth and for serving you through serving others. And thank you for the living water that's in my veins. Help that to overflow out of me to bless others. And basically, just use me and all the blessings you've bestowed upon me to bless others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're doing, just bringing people into the church. And it's not, people think, well, it's boring, it's Melba. And I'm like, no. I mean, look at you. I think you're a pretty dynamic young leader.
Yeah, I mean, you can try to tell people that they should go to church because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Or you can sell them on, maybe it will improve your life, or maybe you'll be a better person or build better habits. But if there's truly something inside of you that's real, like if you have a peace or a joy that you can't explain, that's such an easy thing to sell to people because they're going to want what you have. And so, that's something like we tell our leaders and our mentors for young people, whatever you are, they will become.
Exactly.
And so we're not so focused on them learning, a bunch of content or becoming a better instructor. It's just, you need to foster something, cultivate something within you that is real, that is authentic, something that's truly, life-giving between you and the Lord. And the kids are going to want that.
Well, and that's to me, I think so leaders set the tone, but exactly, they model the behavior that they want the next generation to act in that way. But that's the thing that always frustrated me with politics is that, you have politicians or elected officials talking about their faith and all this stuff, and then their actions just don't match up with their words. And I've told people, I think we need more people of faith in the corporate world, in the political world, in every sector, but we need leaders that model their faith. They don't pay it lip service because, as you say, I mean, younger generations have been marketed to their entire lives. And so that, bull detector is just well developed in generations, your generation and the generations following you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that my wife and I have been really trying to figure out is when you lead a small group, often kids kind of feel like there's a right answer that they need to discover.
Yeah.
Because they're like, okay, this older person wants me to say something. The answer's probably Jesus or something related to Jesus, And it's like, how do we give them a space to just say whatever and just, express themselves? Like rather than trying to, lead them to one answer, we just want them to feel like I can share whatever is going on in my mind or in my heart, and people are going to rally around that and have a human connection, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there's no wrong answer, but I love that. So two other guys and myself put in an application for a panel discussion at South by Southwest next March, which I think we'll get it. But I'm 56. Another one of the guys who's a believer, he's 39. He's an author out of Austin. But then the other guy his name is Gabe McGuire. He is a freshman at Penn, and he is the president of the Young Forwardists, I'm on the advisory board of the Forward Party, which I think will develop into, a viable third party. But Gabe McGuire, as I say, I told him when we put the application in, I said, man, I want you to know if we do this, there are no junior partners. We are all equals in this because you have a unique worldview that I don't have. So it's not like I'm the senior partner and you're the junior partner. We're all in this together. And it's kind of like you say, there's no wrong answer. Everybody has something to give and to bring to the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people slam the younger generations by saying that they're lazy and not wanting to work hard.
Oh,
But that's not been my experience.
No.
Like when I try to hang out with high school guys, they're all working on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
You know, they're all doing like construction jobs or landscaping or just odd jobs around town to make money. Like there's something that is in guys specifically that, you know, I'll just speak to guys since I'm a guy, that they want to provide and they want to, you know, rise to the occasion. And that's something that I think that God put in our DNA. That's not something that one generation has and the next generation doesn't have.
No, I totally agree. But it's like, so, you know, the Forward Party is basically, it's principles based. So we endorse Democrats and Republicans, but you have to sign a contract saying we will maintain our character and integrity. We will treat everybody with dignity and respect in the process. And I'm like, it's all the things that kids are taught in kindergarten, basically. It's sad that we have to have a political party signing them up. But so the young Forwardists, as I say, Gabe is the president. He's 18 years old and a freshman at Penn. But he said something really wise. He said, you know, and they are growing like wildfire. He said, I'm 18 years old. This is the first presidential election I can vote in, and I'm not excited about it. He said, all my generation has ever known has been toxic political polarization and just the food fight that is politics. He said, and I think we deserve better. I said, I totally agree. Mm-hmm. But I told him, I'm like, when I was 18, I was not really concerned about changing the politics of the United States, but it's all these teenagers. I'm like, and they are working like anything. It's just amazing. With their course load and everything, they're still finding time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. You know, the media is pushing every generation, especially younger generations, so much that they need to care and hold all of these things in their head. And it kind of gets lost that there are just daily, more mundane things that God has put in your life that you should be able to prioritize first of all, you know, but then of course it's important to care about your leaders and your country and everything. But, you know, policies are becoming more important than character, I think.
Yeah.
At least that's how it seems to be portrayed.
Yeah.
And that's kind of dangerous because having the right policy but not having the right character, like it's kind of impossible to have that in the first place.
You know, I totally agree with you on that. And, you know, I'm a big character guy, but I just think, as I say, we need leaders in politics modeling the behavior. Because I tell people, I grew up with statesmen in both parties that I looked up to because they worked in bipartisan fashion. But now when basically you're demonized by your own party if you cross the aisle and work with somebody, I'm like, how are you ever going to solve problems? And we serve a uniting God. And so just to say, well, they're evil because they're in this party, or to say, well, they've got great policies, but yeah, we can look the other way on the character issues. I think that is dangerous as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny, I'm 26, and I feel like right now in this stage of life, things start to get real in some ways. And so, like, you know, you buy your first house, you suddenly get way more concerned with certain policies or things in your county. You're like, oh my goodness, I wish this was different, or I wish we had this, or all right, I guess I need to do something about it because it's affecting me now. You know, like in college, it was all theoretical.
Yeah.
It's very easy just to be a part of the tweeting whatever you believe, but, you know, not really affecting your life.
Yeah.
It was kind of hitting home now.
Well, you know, it's interesting. So I just ran the Augusta Stronger Together campaign to get our mayor a vote. It was inclusive. It was grassroots. But I particularly reached out to your generation because I'm like, okay, we consolidated our city county government in 1996. So young people that are 28 years old, and your generation too, your age, have never had any input into the way our government functions. And that to me is not democracy, but you being 26, you're buying your first house, you're married and everything, you should have a say-so in how our government functions, because I continually say it's of the people, by the people, and for the people. So I was very excited because your generation really came out and voted, but I'm like, now 20-something-year-olds can say, we took a step in helping to co-create a more functional government. And I think that's pretty cool, but it's like people don't perceive government or politics would be cool, and there's a reason for that. Same to a degree about religion, but they single out the extremists in both spheres, but the people that are working, really doing the work to unify churches, to unify communities, they just don't get as much press coverage.
There was a philosopher that came and spoke at my high school one time, and I didn't even know that philosophers still existed back then, but he said, every person needs to answer 4 questions in their life: the origin, their meaning, their morality, and their destiny.
Yep.
It was a great talk, and so many people are being pushed this narrative of whatever you feel or live your truth or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But kids are hungry for just morality, for what is right and what is wrong. And I think when people start to really pursue what is right and flee from what is wrong, I mean, that's a Bible verse, cling to what is good, hate what is evil. That will push people back into like the political landscape, because it's not so much just I'll live my truth out here and I won't be affected by whatever policies the people put forth that are running this country, but it's like, no, I believe this is right. I believe this is what's best for me and for my community, and so I either myself or someone that I support needs to come make this happen.
Well, and it comes back to modeling though too, but I think that my dad was a B-17 bomber pilot in World War II at the age of 18, but he had lost his father when he was 12 years old. But I think the military really taught him duty, honor, integrity, service above self. But I think we can evolve as people in our views, and I think we should and grow. But I'm like, the foundational issues of, morality and all these things, you can evolve, but keep that same foundation. The world changes, but I think as long as you've got that good, firm foundation, which our faith teaches us, then you can change in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, well, I think one of the main tenets of Christianity, if you look at the New Testament, is that we exist for the benefit of other people.
Yep.
Like the gospel came to you on its way to somebody else. That's from Robbie Gallaty, who's a pastor who wrote, a bunch of books on discipleship. But he says basically like the whole reason that Jesus saved you was so that he would display his love and his glory in your life, and so that other people would be saved. And so there's a lot of good narratives in the world that can somewhat line up with that. But I think the whole living for yourself and just whatever matters to you, that's all you should focus on. I think that's opposite of the gospel message, because it doesn't benefit anyone else.
No, well, I mean, so having survived cancer last year has really deepened my faith. And I'm like, Lord, just all the grace, all the blessings, the anointing that you've blessed me with, use me as a vessel to amplify, multiply, magnify, and just glorify just those blessings, and help me to share them with other people. Because I think that's what we're here to do. And, going through cancer really blessed me in so many ways, because it made me think so much more deeply about this. But it's, as you say, just to model it, but to say, and that's my concern that I expressed earlier, when life is about the number of TikTok followers you can get, and sorority girls doing outfit of the day, I'm like, there's always somebody that's going to have more TikTok followers than you. Mm-hmm. And I think about the name and image and likeness deals. I mean, kids that are 21 years old in college that are driving around in, Lamborghini SUVs. I won't mention any names, but I'm like, so it's like, where do you go from there? You're filling your life full of worldly things. So particularly athletes. So in 5 years, if you don't make it in the NFL and you're broke, are you going to be saying, man, remember when I had that Lambo on campus in Athens? But what we're talking about in faith and everything is fulfilling, and it's, it goes with you your entire life. And it's not like the worldly things that can just go away in an instant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, lately I've been using the word investing a lot, because discipleship, that's a churchy word, and it has great meaning. It's very profound. But I think just like with, we invest our finances,
Yeah.
God has called us to invest our time and invest our skills that he's gifted us and invest in our relationships that he provides for us. And, Jesus, he gave a lot of great sermons, like the Sermon on the Mount.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the majority of what he was doing, it was just an investment, just in individuals, whether it was people he healed or people he met one time or people that walked around with him for 3 years. And there's a reason that he selected a few people to walk around for 3 years rather than just meet one time.
Well, it's interesting to me that, so after I did the Augusta Stronger Together campaign, passed with 74% of the vote, and I'm like, that was straight up spirit-driven kingdom building, whether people knew it or not. But I'm like, okay, now, everybody's going to beat a path to my door, and that didn't happen. So finally, after 3 or 4 months, I got an op-ed on it published, and I'm like, okay, now, God, it's your time, not my timing. Going against the grain and trying to walk your faith in politics is not the easiest thing to do. But I sent that op-ed or sent the information on the campaign to so many governmental leaders that I thought they're going to go, hey, that's great. But I think in God opening my eyes and removing the scales from my eyes, I'm like, okay, you're going to show me, I don't need to be disappointed if this person doesn't take to it. It's through that you're going to show me who I actually can work with to do, the mission you've called me to. So it's there are lots of people out there that you would think would be good to work with, but Jesus had that small group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can be easy to get disappointed when results don't go the way we think. But something I remind myself and other people, but I remind myself a lot since I speak at least once a week at youth group and I preach sometimes and talk at different things, is, there were a lot of prophets in the Old Testament who didn't see any success. They actually saw a lot of failure, but they were very faithful and they did exactly what God called them to. There was one prophet who, took all the words that God told him to write down, and he wrote this great letter and he brought it to the king, and the king ripped it up page by page and burned it in the fire in front of him. And so God told that prophet, go write it again.
Well, it's funny, and your dad and I got together last week, but I said, you as a believer can understand. I'm like, it's not everybody understands the calling on my life. When I'm like, well, I've turned down lots of jobs that offered me lots of money and everything to try to be obedient to God's call for me. Mm-hmm. And I look at it now and I'm like, you kept me out of the bureaucracy. You kept me from getting into the machine and everything. But I'm like, now I consider, I'm like, Lord, particularly through coming through cancer, I'm like, the anointing that you've placed upon me, the grace that you've shown me, the blessings, all of that is more valuable than all of the world's riches put together. And so thank you for giving me that perspective. I'm like, you don't have to be the most, the highest paid athlete or the highest paid executive. None of that, increases God's love for you in any way.
Yeah. A lot of my friends are, my best friends from college all have really successful jobs.
Yeah.
And then I'm a youth pastor. But it's always fun when we get together for weddings because a lot of them are believers as well. And, I don't remember where we heard this, but somewhere we kind of picked up the mantra of, Jesus isn't asking us to be successful. He's asking us to be faithful.
Yeah.
And so, when we get to heaven, he's not going to look at us and be like, were you successful in everything you did?
No.
It's just, were you faithful with what I asked you to do? And so a lot of these guys who do have high-paying jobs in big cities with big firms and all in finance and all that, they're some of the most faithful guys I know.
Yeah.
And they're still building character every day, and they're getting their quiet time with God, and they're loving their spouse, and they're playing pickleball at night just like normal people. And they're not focused on worldly things, even though God's given it to them.
Yeah.
Probably for a reason, so that they can use that for his kingdom at some point.
No, and that's exactly, back to our conversation about, I'm like, in the corporate world, in politics, in every sector, we need people. I've got a friend, good friend of mine who's an executive with Chick-fil-A, but he said, Truett Cathy, what an amazing organization, company as that is, talk about staying faithful
Yeah.
and creating tons of wealth. But Kathy said, we have to be prosperous so that we can give back. And so I think leaders with that mindset, like your friends, that is worth gold. And I'm like, God has given us all different calls. They're all to serve in wherever we are in whatever position he's called us to. But that's the thing, and you hit the nail on the head. Whatever he's called us to do, whether it's to be, a CEO, a mayor, a garbage man, whatever, a minister, we are to serve him and to stay faithful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one notion that I'm really thankful that the Lord is correcting around me is that the pastors are the ones who are called to do the works of ministry. That's not true. I lead a youth group every week, but there are all the, adults that show up to be mentors and be small group leaders. Not one of them works for the church other than me and my wife, right? So, Ephesians 4 says that God gave the pastors and the leaders and the teachers to equip the saints for the works of ministry. And so we're here in an equipping role. But all the people who are doing finance and real estate and nursing and occupational therapy during the day, God has called them to come invest in the next generation. And there just needs to be someone to kind of coordinate that and get the schedules going, right?
Well, and that's the thing that, as I say, we being a group of guys have put together a panel application for South by Southwest, but the title of the panel is A Radical Idea, Politics, Love, and Winning Elections. And I'm like, that's what I did. I mean, serving through love and compassion in the mayor's office and outside of it. But one of the points that we make is that if we're going to fix, the political situation in the nation, it's got to be cross-generational. It can't be, as I say, I put great hopes in your generation, but I'm here to mentor and to help and to serve you guys, because I'm like, if my generation does not mentor the next generation, how does that model that your generation should mentor the generation coming behind you? But that's, it's sort of pay it forward, but I think that's what we do through faith. And as you say, everybody's got a ministry, whether you're, a CEO or whatever, if we look for it and listen to God to see where it is.
And I tell you what I'm excited about with young people is the emphasis on health. I think that is going to radically change our country for the better, because we went all the way from maybe 100 years ago, definitely 100 years ago, there was such stigma around seeking out help for like mental health.
Oh, yeah.
And we've gone all the way from there to where young people not only care so much about mental health, but there's starting to be such a focus on physical health and emotional health. And I'm really hoping that that'll, incorporate spiritual health as well. But there's so many things with like food in this country and how food is made and just the addictive nature and the dopamine that comes with food. That's way more important to the brain than the actual nutrients.
Yeah.
And so I'm just hoping that if we can make such strides with, mental health, and it's actually cool that you're trying to be mentally healthy and trying to beat depression or beat anxiety, then we could get to a place where it's actually really cool and really an honorable thing to be taking care of your body and being, exercising and active for your whole life. I mean, our country really needs that.
No, I totally agree. And it's like, when I was first diagnosed, my oncologist said, you're the most physically fit esophageal cancer patient we've ever had. So I was 55. But they said, because you're in such good shape, we can get very aggressive with this. So they did 5.5 weeks of 5 times a week radiation, 1 time a week chemo. I never had any side effects. I was going straight from radiation to the Y. But so, my cancer is gone. I didn't have to have the surgery or anything. But people said, well, you were physically fit. And I said, yes, that is true. And we need to maintain our fitness level our entire lives, because that's what allowed them to get so aggressive with my treatment. And that made a huge difference. And they said, well, you had a positive attitude too. And I'm like, yeah, I try to apply that to everything I do, because life's just easier if you do. And I said, I'll give you a third thing. I had great medical care. I had great doctors. And I said, but if you don't undergird those things with faith, I don't think you're going to get the result I had. It was a combination of the health factors and everything, but it was also undergirded with faith. And so I do see people that get to be my age and they just give up on their physical fitness. And I'm like, you just never need to do that. But I think that's, that's part of mind, body, and spirit is what we need to focus on.
Yeah. And, like working at a church, trying to teach people about prayer is one of the hardest things, because it's like, what, you want me to just talk to God? Where, like, so many kids say, I feel like my prayers just hit the ceiling. Like, where are they going? But we're taught to pray and ask for God to do stuff. Like, God, will you heal this? Or will you fix this? And I think something that we're really trying to push is Jesus is a miracle worker, and he does miracles in an instant all the time. He still does that all over the world. And at the same time, he has provided so many things and choices for you to make every single day that just bring so much health. Like, for example, if you want to have a stronger connection with God, if you want to be able to actually hear God's voice, definitely ask for that, and you might hear it in that instant. But also, we try to teach people, ask God, what are the ways that you've put into place, like the means of grace for me to actually encounter you? And so, like daily quiet time, for example, it might not hit you upside the head the first day or feel like you're being transformed, but just like daily exercise, your body's just getting stronger every single day.
Absolutely. I mean, your faith is like a muscle. You have to exercise it. But it's funny. After I was diagnosed, I started to pray. I mean, my morning prayer time takes like 2 hours now, because I pray for everybody that I've met in my journey. All the doctors, all the nurses, all the patients. I just pray for everybody by name. I was always bad with names, but if you start committing to memory all the names of all the people you've met, but it is I used to feel guilty if I didn't get, as soon as I woke up, I got out of bed. But now I'm like, that is the most important time of my day to do that. But I heard something one time, I can't remember where it was. I think it might have been on WAFJ. Somebody was talking about, said, we're used to just asking, I want this, give me this, give me this. Said, one of the best ways to pray is, Lord, tell me what you need me to know. And so I do that every day. I'm like, in this situation, if that's where you want me to go, just tell me. But in any of this, in any way I can contribute that you want me to, just tell me what you want me to know and lead me to where you want me to go.
Yeah, and God is not like our butler.
No, exactly.
And out of the two parties in the relationship, he is by far the greater and the more powerful one. And so it's amazing that he would offer to meet our needs and to answer our prayers. But at the same time, there's probably things that he wants to say to us and places he wants to lead us or people he wants us to encounter. And if all we're focused on is what we need from him, we're missing out on the story that he's invited us into.
Well, it's as I say, I got together with your dad last week, but I was telling him, it's almost like a series of epiphanies. But a couple weeks back, I was like, okay, Lord, you didn't choose the hard road for me. You chose me for the hard. You chose me for the hard road. And I'm like, so everything I've gone through in 56 years on earth, bad and good, highs and lows, everything. I'm like, you have taken that to prepare me for whatever comes next. And like I say, choosing to go against the grain of politics as usual is not an easy thing to do, but it's worked here in Augusta. And my prayer, I'm about to start working with the soon-to-be mayor of Florence, South Carolina. And so her name is Peaches Barnes, but she's also a minister. And she said, when I talk about leading through love and compassion, people look at me like I've lost my mind. I'm like, no, that is, in that position, I mean, being a mayor, you can focus on healing your community, and it can be a ministry, but I'm like, I think that's what we need to look at. All of us, what part of my life, what about I do is a ministry. How do I serve people through this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, God's put us all here to minister to the world. You know, Jesus said it's better that I go because I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit and you're going to do greater works than I did. That's what we're here for.
Well, man, I will tell you, Charles, we could talk all day long, and I do want to continue the dialogue. But as we get down towards the end, I always ask a few questions. So first off, where can people find you?
So I'm the youth pastor at Trinity on the Hill. If you try to find me on social media, good luck. I think I have a few social media accounts, but you know, I'm trying to overcome screen addiction and just try to stay off it as much as possible. But yeah, you know, I preach sometimes there, and you know, I'm passionate about getting other 20-somethings and 30-somethings invested in people younger than them, because I've seen some of the biggest growth that I've experienced in my faith was when I started discipling younger guys, because then they ask questions or they ask about character, and it holds you accountable.
Yep. Well, I mean, I just appreciate what you're doing. I at a conference not too long ago, a guy that runs a bridging organization called One America, that's a faith-based organization trying to heal the divides in our country. But I think he said that like 40% of ministers nationwide are considering leaving the ministry due to their congregations being so divided. So, you know, when I found out you were back in town and doing this, I'm like, man, I've got to get him on the podcast, because I'm like, that's concerning. If half of those ministers left the ministry, who's going to be there to preach God's word? So I appreciate you having the courage to follow his call for you and to do what you're doing here in Augusta. Now, my last question is, on a daily basis, what brings joy to your heart and puts a smile on your face?
Walking with no stimulation, no podcast or music or no screen, just walking and looking around and hearing normal things that, you know, humans have heard for thousands of years.
Yep.
But you can go your whole day without hearing a bird chirp now.
Yep.
You know, you can get from your house to your car, and then your car to your office to your car to your house. And it's just, and I get like that too, but it's so healing when I just get out, go on a run, or, you know, play tennis, play golf, play pickleball. Yeah, and I think that's why quiet time is called quiet time.
Yep.
You know, and that really is a lost art, and it can look different for different people. But just probably the thing that brings me the most joy is having a shared experience with other guys my age.
You know, and that is so. Last Saturday, I went on a dove shoot with your cousin Larry Knox at his place up in Thompson. So William Knox was there. So 3 of my great nephews were there: Julian Barrett, Michael Wallace, and Jack Wallace. Michael shot his first 3 birds.
That's awesome.
But to be there with family, it was a beautiful day. I'm like, that shared experience, I'm like, I wouldn't have cared if I hadn't shot a bird, but it brought back a memory to me. Years and years and years ago, I was up there on a dove shoot, and your cousin Lee killed his first bird. And not that that's about killing or anything, but just to be there for a special moment in a young person's life. You're always going to remember that, but it is that shared experience and family experiences. I'm like, we're all family. We're all children of God. So I love that you said that. That is so true.
Yeah, you know, last Saturday I was with my wife's family in Alpharetta, and we were going up to like a winery in North Georgia, and my wife Julia, she just decided in the morning that we were all going to leave our phones at the house. And a few hours in, it was uncomfortable because you're reaching in your pocket and it's not there. But we just walked around this farm, you know, with all these farm animals for like 6 hours, and all we had was just talking to each other and just enjoying food and drink and hearing, you know, goats and sheep and everything. I mean, it was like healing to the soul. And so you drive home, you're like, why don't we do this more often?
Exactly.
You know, it's just, and that's why I really am optimistic about the younger generations, because every single person that God created is wired to have human connection.
Amen.
And they're going to figure out how to get it, right? And so if you tell them, come to this event, there's going to be all these exciting things or whatever, if they don't see or perceive human connection in there, they're not going to go for it. And same thing with media. And I think there's a lot of ways that media can promote human connection, and they're going to find those ways.
Well, and that's to me, defining what is cool. Human connection to me is so cool. I mean, our faith is so cool because it's about that connection. But I hope that you're sort of setting the tone, and your generation is, to really get back to that human connection, because once you have it, it's so much different than connecting online or anything. It's nurturing and it's wholesome, and it's what we need. But
absolutely,
man,
yeah.
God bless you. Thank you for being an awesome guest. And man, I want to have you back and to continue the dialogue.
For sure. Thank you so much. This was fun.
All righty. Well, that's all the time we got. Drop in the mic and we are out. Hey guys, thanks for listening to or watching the Changemaker podcast today. Greatly appreciate it. If you're listening and you want to see the video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Deke Copenhaver. That's pretty easy to remember, I would think. But really, we also want to remind you to like, subscribe, rate across all platforms, download. And if you're looking for a coach, a speaker, or anything, you know where to find me. Just email me at me@dekecopenhaver.com. And thanks so much for listening.